Timon of Athens, Act 1. On any given morning, Timon's grand foyer brimmed with painters, poets, and merchants, each one cradling a gift or a hopeful smile while waiting for Timon of Athens to grant them an audience. Inside the tall marble entrance, the floors were polished to a gleam, and the columns were carved with proud Athenian symbols. A low hum of conversation drifted in the air, a kind of muted excitement. These visitors, ranging from well groomed artists to hawk eyed jewelers, all wanted a piece of Timon's endless generosity. Scene 1. At the outer edge of that crowd stood the poet, eyes bright with ambition, rummaging through pages of verse he hoped to read aloud to Timon. Next to him stood the painter, carefully balancing a covered canvas. Nearby loitered a jeweler, discreetly adjusting his velvet pouch. A merchant spoke quietly to the jeweler about the great man they were about to see. "He's a marvel, that Timon," said the merchant, tapping his cane once on the marble. "A man so giving he might as well be Athens' golden wellspring." The jeweler nodded. "You see this piece I've brought?" He tapped the leather case at his side. "I'll wager he pays me double what it's worth, just because he likes my smile." Overhearing, the poet shrugged. "He's a lord with a heart too big for his own good. We'll see how it goes, won't we?" Just then, an artist meandered by with a new painting rolled up under his arm, and the painter gave him a curt nod. They all paused when they heard the footsteps on the stairs. A handful of Athenian senators crossed the wide landing, heads held high, ignoring the ancient guests. They disappeared into an inner chamber. People whispered that Timon had summoned them to discuss a city matter, but no one knew the details. The merchant leaned into the jeweler again. "A grand day to present your work, wouldn't you say?" The jeweler adjusted his collar. "A day fit for a king," he agreed, rubbing a thumb along the corner of his leather case. At that moment, a servant stepped through the double doors. "Lord Timon will see you all now," he announced in a polite voice that did not hide a note of impatience. They filled into a spacious room with high ceilings. The windows let in bright morning light, which highlighted the swirl of dust motes dancing over a grand table covered in parchment. Timon himself appeared at last, crossing from a hallway at the far side. He was a man in his middle years, his kindly face radiating warmth. His clothing was fine, but not ostentatious. He moved with an easy confidence, as though unaware of how truly special he was, or perhaps simply unmoved by it. "Good morning, everyone," Timon said, voice smooth as well-aged wine. "I see quite a crowd. Please, come forward. Let me know how I can help you." The jeweler stepped forward and bowed. "My lord, I bring a new jewel, if it pleases you." He opened his case to reveal a sparkling stone that caught the sunlight in flickers of rainbow. Timon took a moment, leaning in with obvious delight. "Beautiful. I suspect it's worth more than I can guess." The jeweler shrugged modestly, trembled with excitement. "Your Honor, you honor me by even looking at it." The poet cleared his throat. My lord, I have composed a brief tribute." He fumbled with his pages, found the right lines, then read in a lilting voice about Timon's unmatched kindness and the glorious fortune he shared so freely with the world. The words were quite flowery, but Timon listened with a kind smile. When the poet finished, Timon clapped softly. "I'm grateful. You must allow me to reward your skill." Just then, Apamantus drifted in, silent at first. He was a rough man, or so everyone said, always ready with a cynical remark. He watched from the doorway, arms crossed. No one had invited him. He simply disliked pretense and had come, it seemed, to keep an eye on what he called the flatterers. Flavius, Timon's steward, hovered by a side table, covered in scrolls and notes. He wore an expression Timon rarely noticed, one that revealed his worry about finances. However, Timon never liked to talk of money when guests were around, so Flavius kept quiet. At that moment, Alcibiades, the soldier, arrived with a purposeful step, sword at his hip. "Good day to you, my lord," he said. "I've come to pay my respects." Timon greeted him with a handshake. "Alcibiades, you're always welcome. Any news from the field?" "Nothing urgent. I'm headed to the council soon to speak on behalf of a friend." Timon nodded. "I know you'll speak with honor. Let me know if you have any need at all." Alcibiades thanked him and stepped aside to let others approach. In the swirl of polite chatter and fawning praise, Apemantus finally showed up, his voice low and edged with scorn. "All these folks sure do love to see you when your gold is handy," he said, loud enough that Timon could hear, yet soft enough to sound like a private aside. Timon gave a mildly amused look. "Would it kill you to enjoy a morning without suspicious, Apemantus?" The philosopher shrugged. "Probably so." Before Timon could reply, a messenger arrived with urgent news about a friend named Ventidius, apparently thrown in prison over a debt. The messenger explained that Ventidius needed 5 talents to be released. Timon turned to Flavius. "Pay it at once, and see the man freed. A friend in need deserves more help, not less." Flavius pressed his lips together, but complied with a bow. Timon turned to his guests. "See, money is best used for lifting each other up. That is how I choose to live." Apemantus muttered. "Oh, and that is how you will learn the cost of living, my lord." Timon, caught in a warm wave of generosity, hardly heard him. Shortly after, an old Athenian arrived, complaining that Timon's servant Lucilius was courting his daughter. "See, she's my only child," the man said, trembling with anger. "I want her to marry someone richer, with better prospects. Tell your man to leave her alone, or I will disown her." Timon took the old man's fury calmly. He called in Lucilius. "Do you love this young woman?" Lucilius, respectful yet firm, nodded. "I do, my lord, and she loves me." Timon turned back to the father. "He's an honest man. He deserves your daughter's hand, and I'm prepared to offer a fair dowry. If you give your blessing, I'll make sure they lack for nothing." Though the old man had come spoiling for a fight, Timon's generous spirit and that promise of a dowry swayed him. He gave his word. "All right, I agree, but only because you have guaranteed my daughter's future." The old man departed, somewhat mollified, while Lucilius fell at Timon's feet, whispering thanks. Apemantus gave a curt laugh. "So easy to buy contentment," he said, shaking his head. Timon just gave him a patient glance, like a father indulging a grumpy child. Then he waved to the room. "Now, friends, I'm hosting a banquet tonight. You're all invited, so let us enjoy good food, good music, and good company." The guests bowed and beamed as Timon promised them each a token of gratitude for their fine wares and devotion. Apemantus, arms still crossed, said nothing. Timon offered him only a nod before leaving with Flavius. In the hush that followed, one local lord turned to another and whispered, "Truly, Timon outdoes the very gods in kindness." They drifted away, chatting about the lavish dinner to come, while Apemantus muttered behind them, "If only the gods gave feasts and gold on demand. Timon's not a god, he's just a man. And men bleed." Scene 2. That evening, Timon's great hall was transformed into a scene of splendor. Long tables had been arranged with enough seats for dozens of guests. Candles flickered in brass holders, casting a warm glow. Laughter and chatter echoed against stone walls. Servants hurried in and out, carrying trays piled with roasted meats, fresh bread, and fresh sweet pastries. At the head table, Timon sat with an easy smile. He raised his glass. "To friendship," he said. "May we always meet together in joy." The guests echoed his toast. "To friendship," then drank deeply. Many may come, wealthy acquaintances, city officials, artists, and Lucilius with his newly betrothed. The jeweler bragged about a new piece he planned to show Timon soon. The poet busied himself scribbling lines that praised the generosity of his golden host. The painter slyly mentioned how Timon might like another portrait in the near future. Each friend sought Timon's favor in some small or large way. In one corner of the table sat Apemantus. He'd hardly touched the lavish dishes. Instead, he nibbled on plain bread, watching everyone with hawk like eyes. From time to time, Timon tried to nudge him. Apemantus, why not taste the roast or sample the wine? It's a feast for all. Apemantus only said, the bread is enough and the water is clean, but I prefer my own counsel to the noise of false praise. One lord praised Timon's wine, another told him how Athens was a brighter city with Timon in it. Timon, for his part, took their flattery in stride, though whether he believed it or merely found it polite was hard to say. Apemantus tapped a spoon on the edge of his plate, then murmured quietly, they drink your good health, but if you were sick, they would vanish. Mark my words. Timon flashed a thin smile. You do have a talent for gloom. Midway through the evening, the doors at the far end of the hall swung wide open. Ventidius, newly freed from jail, arrived in time for the banquet. He rushed in, still dusty from his travels, and knelt at Timon's chair. I'm free only because you paid my debts, he said, voice trembling with gratitude. I tried to repay you, but they told me you refused to accept the money back. Timon waved a gentle hand. What kind of friend would I be if I ransomed you just to take back a gift? Enjoy the feast. Let us speak no more of it. Ventidius looked close to tears, then hurried to find a seat. The lords nearby clapped him on the back and offered him wine. Apemantus gave a quiet sneer. We will see who else Timon rescues from ruin, and if they repay him with real loyalty. As the meal wound down, Timon signaled for music. A troupe of performers, some costumed as mythic figures, danced in the hall, entertaining everyone with a choreographed number. The guests applauded, voices rising in excitement. Timon, gleaming with pride and generosity, handed out small tokens, rings, mini sculptures, bits of gold. For Lucullus, he promised a fine horse. For Lucius, a future gift of jewels. For Sempronius, he gave a nod, hinting at yet more generosity. Flavius, hovering at the edge of the room, tried to catch Timon's eye. He carried a ledger under one arm, its weight suggesting large expenses. However, Timon, caught up in the glow of hospitality, waved him away for a moment. We'll talk tomorrow, Timon mouthed. Flavius, eyebrows pinched, bowed in reluctant acceptance. Eventually, one by one, the guests excused themselves. They thanked Timon profusely, promising eternal gratitude. Outside, the night air was cool, and a few stepped onto the porch, marveling at how Tom's house seemed to shimmer with kindness and, yes, with gold. Apemantus was among the last to leave. As he passed Timon, who stood in the main hallway, to bid farewell, he said in a low voice, You feed these men now, but you may hunger for a crumb of their loyalty later. A feast is fleeting, Timon, remember that. Then he slipped into the darkness without waiting for a response. Alone at last, Timon lingered in the hall. A single servant collected stray cups. Flavius approached. Ledger clutched in his hand, but Timon glanced at him wearily. I know you worry. Tomorrow, I promise, you'll have my full attention. Flavius bowed, though his troubled expression did not fade. Good night, my lord, he said, then left Timon standing under the flickering torchlight. For a moment, Timon stood still, hearing only the echo of Apemantus' parting words. Then he turned, walked slowly to his chamber, and closed the door behind him. The night settled on Timon's house, silent and splendid, but high overhead the moon bore witness to all the dreams and debts swirling beneath that roof, and perhaps it knew, if Timon did not, that hospitality and fortune can run dry faster than anyone thinks possible. Act 2, Scene 1. A single senator walked across the polished floor of his private study, papers in hand. These lines on his face showed the weight of his sums and debts. He mumbled figures under his breath, tapping a pen against the parchment. He paused by the window, letting the Athenian sunlight illuminate his troubled thoughts. 5,000 before, plus 9,000 more owed to Varro and Isidore, he muttered. Now it swells to 25. It grows like a weed never trimmed. It cannot last. It cannot. He closed his eyes, recalling Timon's open-handed giving. He almost smiled, remembering how Timon would fling gold at problems like a man drowning a fire with a barrel of water. Then he remembered his own needs. He needed that money, and he needed it now. If I so much took a beggar's dog and handed it to Timon, he'd likely turn that dog into a fortune. He makes anything bloom with gold, at least for a while. Yet how much can a man spend before the well runs dry? He stopped talking when he heard footsteps in the hallway. "Caiaphas!" he called out. "Caiaphas, get in here." Caiaphas entered, cloak folded over one arm. "Yes, sir? I want you to go to Lord Timon. Demand my money." Do not accept his usual cheerful dismissal. Show him these debts, and do not let him shrug them off. He has missed his dates. Left me hanging. My own reputation suffers while he keeps giving feasts to flatterers. I respect him, but will not break my back to fix his finger. The senator thrust a stack of papers at Caiaphas. Take these bonds. See that the dates are clear, and bring me what is mine. Put on your stern face. I suspect Timon's feathers might be plucked soon, so do it quickly. Caiaphas tucked the papers under his arms. I go, sir. The senator felt his annoyance rise. Good. Spare me the chatter and be on your way. He watched Caiaphas leave, then turned back to his notes. A hint of regret was creased in his brow. He spoke to the empty room in a hushed voice. Timon, I wish you had been a little less free with your gold. For all our sakes. Scene 2. Flavius, Timon's steward, stood in a corner of Timon's estate, staring at a stack of bills in his hands. He sighed, thinking about how often he had warned his master that constant banquets and generous gifts would lead to trouble. Yet Timon had brushed him aside. It is a flow of spending he will not slow, Flavius said. He will not listen until he feels the sting, but he returns from hunting soon. I must find the courage to speak plainly. He took a step forward, then stopped upon seeing Caiaphas entering the courtyard with two other men, each clearly on a mission to collect debts. One wore Varro's colors, the other belonged to Isidore. They looked uneasy, shifting on their feet. Caiaphas nodded at them. You've come for your master's money, same as I have. They agreed, glancing around a courtyard that seemed too grand for a man in debt. Stone arches framed manicured hedges, and a fountain gurgled happily at the center. I wish we were done with this. I fear we will not be paid today, but we have to try. Timon soon arrived with Alcibiades trailing behind. Timon's hunting gear bore signs of the forest, a bit of dust on his boots and a stray leaf in his hair. He looked cheerful, exchanging a quick word with Alcibiades about their next outing. Then he stopped short when he saw the three men waiting. Timon gave Caiaphas a polite nod. Yes? What is your business? Caiaphas offered him a slip of paper. My lord, this is a note of debts you owe my master. Timon glanced at it, somewhat puzzled. Debts? Who do you represent? A simple man of Athens, sir. He begs for your swift repayment. He has waited long enough. Timon waved a hand dismissively. Talk to my steward. I can make sure it's worked out. Caiaphas stood firm. My lord, your steward once told me to return another day, but my master insists. He needs his money urgently. Varro's man and Isidore's man stepped forward from either side, each holding a sheet listing amounts due. They spoke at once, explaining that their masters also demanded payment. Timon blinked in surprise. How many of you are here? Forcing his voice to raise. I ask you all to wait until tomorrow. Let me settle one matter at a time. Caiaphas opened his mouth to protest, but Timon had already turned inside. Alcibiades, my friend, go on without me. I will catch up later. I need to handle something. Alcibiades and Timon's hunting companions left, casting pitying looks at the three collectors. Timon pulled Flavius aside. speaking urgently and in low tones. What is all this talk about overdue debts and forfeit bonds? I expected none of this. Flavius cleared his throat. My lord, these men arrived at a poor time. Let me speak with them after dinner. I can explain the situation and arrange something. Please trust me. Yes. See that they are comfortable until we talk. I don't wish to be rude. Flavius turned to the men. Come with me. We'll settle the details later. They followed him, muttering among themselves about how deeply in debt Timon must be. Moments later, Apemantus sauntered in with a fool trailing behind him. The two looked ready to cause mischief. Caiaphas and the others paused at the sight of them. Here comes the fool with the sour philosopher, one creditor muttered. Will they make jokes at our expense? He stepped closer. What are you, if not asses? They bristled. How dare you? You do not even know us. Apemantus sneered. I know your type. You chase debts, fill pockets that are not yours, and thrive on interest without ever asking what is right. The fool chimed in with a grin. Yes, indeed. My mistress is a usurer as well, and I am her fool. She takes money from those who arrive sad and sends them away happy, but at Timon's place they arrive happy and leave sad. Seeing Timon and Flavius approach, Apemantus dropped the matter. He and the fool slipped away, leaving the collectors grumbling. Flavius told them, Stay close. I'll speak with you soon. They bowed stiffly and left by a side passage. Timon forced Flavius with a troubled expression. Why did you never tell me how deep in debt we truly are? Flavius spread his hands. My lord, I tried many times. I placed accounts before you, but you brushed them aside. You trusted my honesty, so you never opened the books or let me curb your gifts. Timon felt a twinge of guilt. Perhaps you waited for moments when I was not ready, or perhaps I was a fool not to see. Flavius sighed. I wept at your spending. The land you own is already pledged to cover old debts, and not nearly enough remains for these new demands. Timon glanced around the grand pillars and fine drapes of his hallway. Sell the rest if you must. We will find enough somewhere. Flavius shook his head. I fear it is mostly gone. Our lenders will accept no more promises. Even if you had the entire word to give in a breath, it would vanish. The situation is dire, and I speak frankly because I must. Timon's shoulders sagged for a moment, then he lifted his chin. No matter. I have friends who owe me their fortunes. I have done them kindness. They will help. That is the test of friendship, is it not? He summoned servants, and instructing them to request loans from Lucius, Lucullus, and Sempronius, 50 talents each, and with urgency. Flavius pressed his lips together. My lord, take care. You assume they will rush to repay your gifts, but I have doubts. Timon gave him a brief smile. I trust them. Also speak with the senators. I have served the city's best health, so they must see fairness in helping me. If I ask for 1,000 talents, they will not refuse. Flavius tried to lower his gaze, as if hiding his worry. I already asked them in your name, hoping to spare you, but they said they were short on treasure. They muttered half apologies and offered nothing. Timon's face darkened. So be it. Let the gods repay them. It does not matter. I will speak with Ventidius. He came into a large inheritance when his father died, and I once saved him from prison with 5 talents. He will recall that kindness. Yes, my lord Flavius. Yes, my lord. I will go at once. Timon forced a confident laugh. Ha! You see, Flavius, I am not undone. I have many friends, and they will not fail me. Soon these debts will be settled. Off you go. He exited, leaving Flavius alone with his thoughts. The steward gazed at the papers in his arms. I wish I did not suspect the worst. He thinks all hearts are as generous as his, but the world does not work that way. He sighed and left to fulfill his orders, dreading the news he might have to bring back. Act 3, Scene 1. Flaminius and Lucilius. Flaminius stood in a cool marble hallway, gripping a small wooden box under his cloak. He felt the eyes of passing servants, each sizing him up. Word had arrived that Lucilius would see him, so he waited, thinking about Timon's rising debts and hoping Lucilius would help. At last, a servant announced Lucilius, who descended the stairs with an air of leisurely importance. The moment he saw Flaminius, he flashed an eager smile. He asked about Timon's health, recalled how often he had dined at Timon's lavish table, and even offered Flaminius a cup of wine. Flaminius accepted it politely, though he knew it was not the kind of kindness he had come for. He carefully explained Timon's request for 50 talents, and Lucilius shook his head with exaggerated regret. He blamed Timon for overspending, joked that he had tried to make Timon live more frugally, then slipped a few coins into Flaminius's hand as if to buy his silence. Flaminius felt a rush of anger. He hurled the coins back at Lucullus's feet. Lucullus called him a fool for refusing, then stomped out. Left alone, Flaminius cursed the hypocrisy. He thought of how long Lucullus had enjoyed Timon's generosity, and now repaid it with a mean-spirited denial, muttering a wish that Lucullus might meet misfortune. He left to report the news. Scene 2, Lucius and Rumors. Elsewhere in Athens, Lucius strolled through a public square, chatting with two strangers who mentioned Timon's downfall and Lucullus's refusal to help. Lucius pretended shock and insisted he would have never turned Timon away. He boasted about the small kindnesses Timon had once shown him, including jewels and money, and said he always meant to repay such a friend. But Lucius could continue. Servilius arrived out of breath, carrying Timon's plea for a loan of 50 talents. The confident grin faded from Lucius's face. He rambled that he had just made a foolish purchase and had no spare funds at present. He called it rotten timing, asking Servilius to assure Timon he truly wished he could help. Servilius left with a pained expression. The two strangers eyed Lucius with disapproval, noting how he hid his gold ring when Timon genuinely needed support. After Lucius hurried away, they remarked that Timon had once covered Lucius's debts and even paid his servants' wages. Yet here Lucius was, denying the man who had saved him. They shook their heads at the cruelty of such a turnabout. Scene 3. Sempronius rejects Timon. Meanwhile, a third servant of Timon waited on Sempronius, another so-called friend. The servant explained that Lucullus and Lucius had both refused to help, and Sempronius fumed that Timon should have come to him first. By asking him last, Timon had apparently insulted him. Sempronius then refused to lend a coin. He should have known my place, he said, as though Timon were at fault for hoping for support. With that, he dismissed the servant. Walking away, the servant muttered bitterly that Timon's hopes were gone. He recalled the many open dinners Timon had given to these same men, and how each had turned away in greed. He called them political snakes who offered polite words without loyalty, then continued on to deliver the grim news. Scene 4. The creditors gather. Outside Timon's home, a group of men carrying debt notices began to congregate. Some served Varro, others represented Lucius or different creditors. All wanted their share of Timon's debts. They hovered at the door, exchanging uneasy looks. It was plain that Timon's once glorious riches had dried up, yet they were told to collect. Flaminius emerged briefly, saying Timon was indisposed and not ready to meet them. They insisted they could not leave without payment. Flavius then arrived, looking anxious. When the men demanded money, Flavius asked why they had not presented these bills before during the grand feasts. He argued that pressing Timon now was pointless, given there was nothing left. Still, they refused to leave, believing it their duty to wait. Suddenly, loud voices sounded within. Timon burst out in a fury, raving that even his own doors opposed him. He glared at the men clutching their papers, told them to cut down if they wanted sums so large, then stomped back inside and slammed the door. The creditors glanced at each other, deciding a retreat was best. They agreed among themselves that Timon's debts might never be paid. Scene 5. Alcibiades and the senators. At the same time, Alcibiades arrived to plead for a friend who had broken the city's law. He argued that the man who had fought bravely for Athens and deserved mercy, but the senators insisted the act was too severe to pardon him. Alcibiades claimed soldiers could not be punished for every moment of anger, or none would remain to defend the city. The senators stood by their judgment, turning that same rigid stance on Alcibiades himself when he protested further. They proclaimed him banished forever from Athens. Alcibiades reeled, remembering how he had bled for this city, yet received only disdain. He vowed to gather forces in return, not as their defender, but as an enemy. He left with thunder in his eyes. Scene 6. The Second Feast. In a final effort to address his debts, Timon once more invited his old friends to his home. Rumors hinted he must have discovered some fresh wealth, since he seemed so ready to host again. Guests arrived, hopeful and hungry, thinking Timon had recovered. He greeted them with an odd smile, promising dinner would begin soon. They settled into seats, relieved. Some wondered if Timon had tested them earlier to see who was truly loyal. They asked about new rumors, including Alcibiades' banishment. But Timon waved it off, guiding them to the table. When servants uncovered the dishes, the guests found only stones and bowls of lukewarm water. Timon glared at them, his voice turning hoarse and bitter. He called them parasites, men who had pretended love yet refused him when he needed them. He splashed water in their faces and laughed at how they jumped from their seats in confusion. His anger reached a boiling point, and Timon roared that there would be no more feasts for flatterers. He demanded that they choke on their own hypocrisy. A few tried to speak reason, but Timon cursed them all, shouting from this moment on they would find only hatred at his door. No one would see kindness there again. Timon stormed away, leaving his so-called friends shaken. Some scooped up their cloaks, muttering that Timon must be mad. He had once given them diamonds, now he gave them stones. He had once offered warmth, now only fury. They fled into the night, disturbed by the rage they had witnessed, and when it was over, Timon's house stood silent, stripped of merriment. The guests had scattered like frightened birds, and Timon was left alone with his fury, and Athens had shown its true face. And Timon, who had once been so generous, now vowed to repay ingratitude with the bitterest scorn he could muster. Act 4. Timon stood at the edge of Athens. Beyond him rose the tall walls that had sheltered every feast and banquet he gave, every false friend who praised him for gold. Now he glared at the stones, as if his eyes alone could make them crumble. The anger burned in him, not a flash of wrath, but a deep, unshakable fury that left him trembling. He was finished with the city, and he wanted the city to know it. He raised his voice, though there was no one there to listen. "Fall apart from within," he said. He wished for parents to pass their corruption to their children, for children to turn on their parents, for the rich to grind the poor, and for the poor to rise up like thieves. He wanted the old beaten with their own canes and the laws of Athens to devour themselves. He wished for every sign of human kindness to rot. When he finished this bitter curse, he spat on the road and walked away from the walls, choosing the wilderness over any house or friend. In his mind, the beasts of the forest felt more loyal than the best senators of Athens. Far behind him, Steward Flavius roamed Timon's now quiet halls. He clutched a record book to his chest, flanked by two servants with worried faces. One asked where Timon had gone and whether anything remained of their once grand household. Flavius sighed and said he knew little more than they did. Almost everything had been stripped away. Gold, horses, tapestries, staff. They had scattered, ashamed or too hungry to stay. Two more servants, drawn by their voices, joined them. They confessed they still wore Timon's colors in their hearts. One servant pointed to the ragged clothes they all wore, calling them a sad badge of loyalty to a master who was gone. Another said they stood on a sinking ship, forced to part ways to survive. Flavius regarded them with sympathy. He reached into the pouch containing his personal savings. "We served a good man. For all his flaws, he was kind. Let us share what little I have left. We may never meet again, but if we do, let us remember that we served Timon." He nodded tearfully, and he pressed a few coins into each hand. Then they left by different doors. Flavius watched them go, his own sadness and anger rising. He murmured that he wished Timon had not been so generous. Glory, he reflected, drew false friends like moths to a flame. Now that the flame was gone, so were the moths. Resolving to find Timon and serve him still, if possible, Flavius left the estate. Deep in the woods, Timon dug at the ground with a spade. The sun beat down, sweat lined his face with grime, yet he worked relentlessly, searching for edible roots to satisfy his hunger. He ranted about men being no better than beasts, about nature playing favorites, and about how the rich feasted while the poor starved. He begged the earth to offer him something, anything to keep hunger away. His spade struck something metallic. He scraped the soil aside and found a hidden stash of gold. Scooping up a handful, he let the coins trickle through his fingers in the midday sun. A bitter laugh escaped him. Gold, the very poison that had ruined every friendship he ever knew. So here you are, you damned yellow curse. He almost hurled the coins into the ravine, but instead he closed his fist over them. In the distance, a drumbeat thudded among the trees. Alcibiades also soon appeared, with two women, Phryne and Timandra, at his side. He had been banished from Athens and led an army against it. He barely recognized Timon, who looked wild, like a man who had slept under the open sky for too long. Approaching carefully, Alcibiades greeted him, asking if Timon remembered him. Timon glared. Yes, I know you. I wish I did not. Alcibiades tried to speak of friendship, but Timon silenced him, saying that if Alcibiades planned to destroy Athens, he should do so without mercy. Timon reached into a ragged pouch and hurled gold at Alcibiades' feet, telling him to fund his war. Phryne and Timandra, eyes drawn to the coin, begged for a share. Timon threw gold to them as well, calling them harlots who spread disease and betrayal wherever they went. Disturbed by Timon's savage fury, Alcibiades offered a few words of sympathy, but Timon dismissed it. You trouble me by standing here, he said. Alcibiades asked what harm he had ever done to Timon. Timon snapped that Alcibiades once spoke kindly of him, which was harm enough. He wanted no kind words or pity. Alcibiades finally signaled for the women and soldiers to leave, and they marched off, drums echoing behind them. Shortly after, Epamantis arrived, drawn by rumors that Timon was cursing mankind in the woods. He approached with folded arms and a mocking smile, saying he heard Timon had embraced Epamantis' bitter outlook. Timon spat on the ground, and they traded insults, each calling the other a bigger fool. Epamantis scorned Timon for wallowing in dirt and letting his hatred turn him into a wretched figure. Timon retorted that Epamantis was born miserable and had never known wealth or real friendship, so his hatred cost him nothing, whereas Timon had lost everything. Shrugging, Epamantis said Timon was only a beggar now. He asked if Timon had any plan beyond endless curses. Timon gestured toward the gold he had found, calling it a common whore that corrupted all things. Epamantis warned him that others would soon discover he had gold and come like vultures. Timon rolled his eyes, yelling at Epamantis to leave if it disgusted him so much. Epamantis finally said he would go, returning only when he had no choice. Timon replied that if Epamantis were the last man alive, they might share a bitter cup of water. Epamantis laughed, calling Timon a fool, and vanished among the trees. A band of ragged thieves came next, drawn by rumors of Timon's renewed wealth. They hoped to rob him, but Timon stared at them calmly. He called them soldiers or thieves. It made no difference. They demanded gold, and he pointed out that nature offered roots and berries aplenty. When they pressed him, he flung some coins at them, calling them knaves for asking. He urged them to steal freely, to sow destruction, and to show no mercy. He claimed that even the sun, the moon, and the earth were thieves in their own ways. Spooked by his near-mad rage, the thieves clutched the gold and decided perhaps they should reform. They left, muttering about the grim fury in Timon's eyes. Finally, Flavius found his way into the clearing. He barely recognized Timon, who was gaunt, filthy, and clad in rags. Yet to Flavius he was still the same master. Flavius hurried forward, calling Timon's name, saying how sorry he was. Timon glowered, asking what use any man was to him now. Flavius, tears welling in his eyes, knelt and explained that he had saved a little money of his own. He offered it to Timon, hoping to ease his burden. Timon stared at him for a long moment, his anger softening slightly. He admitted that Flavius's genuine care made him doubt his hatred of all humanity. Perhaps not everyone was false. Even so, Timon insisted he would not return to Athens or forgive its people. He told Flavius to keep his meager savings and live an honest life somewhere else. Flavius begged to remain, but Timon warned that any man who stayed near him would be cursed. Timon handed Flavius some gold, calling him a single bright exception to an otherwise loathsome race. He urged Flavius to walk his own path, far from Timon's lonely bitterness. Flavius, tears on his cheeks, promised never to forget Timon's kindness. Then he turned and left through the dense undergrowth. Timon stood alone, listening until the sound of footsteps faded. He looked down at the gold in his hand, that gleaming metal that had undone his life, then let it spill onto the ground. From now on, he would share his life only with silent nature. He chose the quiet cruelty of the forest over the false cruelty of men. And as the sun dipped behind the branches, Timon drove his spade into the dirt, stepping deeper into the shadows. For the first time in many nights, he felt he could breathe. A narrow path snaked through scrub and broken rocks until it reached the mouth of a cave. The late afternoon light slanted across the hillside where two figures approached, a mix of eagerness and caution. They were the poet and the painter, long-time acquaintances of Timon. They had heard he was suddenly wealthy again despite his fall from grace, hiding in these wilds outside Athens. The painter paused to wipe his brow. "It should be close. Saw a hollow up ahead that matches the description. They say Timon dug himself a little hole over there, far from any friendly city gates." The poet glanced at dust on his shoes. "I still wonder if the stories are true. They say he found gold in the ground, making him richer than when he lavished gifts on everyone." The painter nodded. Alcibiades himself confirmed that Timon passed gold to wandering soldiers into Phrygia and Timandra. He also bestowed a fortune on his old steward. If Timon is handing out treasure, we should remind him of our loyalty. The poet sighed. "So his ruin was only a test. We ought to show our concern now before he marches back to Athens as a hero. That way he remembers our devotion." They climbed over loose stones. Suddenly they spotted a shadowy figure near the cave's entrance, silently watching them. It was Timon, though he made no move to greet them. He stood with folded arms, listening to their hushed conversation. The painter glanced around. "I have no gift but my presence. Perhaps I will promise him a grand new painting. A promise can kindle hope more than a mere trinket." The poet gave a wry smile. "All offer words, maybe a poem about his trials and anger at false friends. That should earn me favor, especially if he has gold to share." Timon, hidden no more, muttered, "They flatter themselves that they can fool me twice. They pretend loyalty, yet their own words condemn them. Perhaps I'll let them approach." He stepped out, and the poet called eagerly, "Hail, Timon, worthy sir! We feared you were lost to the world, yet here you stand." The painter added, "We've missed your presence in Athens, my lord. We came to see you fair, since many have abandoned you." Timon studied them, his face hardened by betrayal, his voice cold. "You claim to be honest men. Tell me, what do you want?" The poet bowed, hoping to sound sincere. "My lord, you were always generous to me. I heard you might be in distress, so I've come to offer my respect. You once inspired me, and your kindness guided my heart." The painter stepped closer. "I too came from concern. You filled our lives with art and beauty, and now we offer our service if you want it." Timon let silence hang in the air. "Honest men, are you? Do you enjoy roots and cold water? Because that is what I survive on out here." They exchanged uneasy looks. The painter said, "We will do anything to serve," trying to hide his discomfort. Timon watched them squirm. "I know you heard I found gold. Athens buzzes with that news. You pretend pure friendship, which is laughable. Deep down, you want treasure, don't you?" The poet tried to protest, but Timon raised a hand. "Enough. I see your hearts. You promise art and poems, fine. I'll give you gold for your talents, but first, rid yourselves of the lying villains you keep in your circles. They talk behind your backs, fool you in plain sight, and you feed them. Cut them off or kill them if you must. Prove you can remove false men from your life. Only then return, and I'll pay you more than you've ever dreamed." Attempting to sound brave, the painter said, "Name these villains, my lord." Timon arched an eyebrow. "I won't babysit your consciences. If you want my gold, clean your houses first. You, painter, claim to capture the human figure so perfectly. Then paint your own hypocrisy. You, poet, say your verses uncover truth. Try uncovering your own faults. Neither of you can stand here and claim real loyalty. They stood speechless. Timon tossed a few gold coins on the ground. They clinked against the stones. You came for gold, so take it, though you do not deserve it. Be on your way. If you want more, remember my condition. The poet bent to pick up a coin, hands shaking. The painter mumbled, We meant no offense, my lord. We only hope to show concern for your troubles. Go, Simone snapped, turning aside. Your presence offends me more than your absence. You want more gold, earn it by casting out the liars you keep. Then come back. Until then, leave. The two hurried off, rattled and disappointed. Timon vanished into his cave, leaving the hillside raw and still in the fading light. Moments later, Flavius arrived with two Athenian senators, both weary from a long journey. The steward bowed. My masters, Timon is in no mood to greet kindly. He trusts no one and wants to see no one, yet you insisted on coming. The first senator lifted his chin. We come from the city. We must speak with him. The second senator sighed. He's exiled himself, but times have changed. Athens needs him now. Let us try reason. Flavius nodded towards the dark entrance. He dwells there. I'll call him. He stepped forward and called, Timon! At first only silence, then Timon emerged, hair disheveled, eyes colder than ever. Speak, and be quick. The first senator dipped his head. Timon, we bring a message from Athens. The Senate asks you to return. They've prepared honors, admitting their past ingratitude to acknowledging their error in neglecting you. Your name is on every tongue spoken with regret. Timon answered flatly. I have no thanks to give. If I could catch the plague and send it back to you, I would. Why pretend dignity now when you withheld it before? The second senator spread his hands. We offer more than words. We beg your leadership. We need you to command our forces against Alcibiades, who threatens the city with war. We regret any harm we caused and pledge to make you whole. Return, and we will seat you at the highest authority. Your name will be hailed again, and you can save your home. Ha! My home, is it? If Alcibiades kills the men of Athens, I do not care. If he sacks the city and drags your elders by their beards, I do not care. Let him do as he pleases. I will not defend a city that once unleashed harm on me. Flavius tried to speak, but Timon stopped him. I was carving my epitaph. Soon the sea will wash my grave each day, erasing who I was. Leave me to that. Let Alcibiades be your curse, or you be his. I have no interest in either side. The first senator, eyes troubled, said softly, You speak with deep anger, yet we sense a flicker of care. Was not Athens once your home? Timon shrugged. I do not wish to see the entire city ruined, but I will not spare it. Let them handle Alcibiades. If they want ease from pain or from war, I have a lesson or two. There is a tree near my cave. I plan to fell it soon, so they can hurry here and hang themselves before the axe falls. That way they will not fear swords. Both senators exchanged horrified looks. Flavius urged them away. He will not be swayed. You see how fiercely he abhors the city. Let us go before we stir his anger more. They were prepared to leave. The second senator ventured a final remark. It pains us to see you like this. We hoped your return might restore Athens and undo past harm. Timon turned away. Go. Let me finish my business. He slipped back into the cave's darkness. Scene 2. Near the city walls, two other senators spoke with a messenger under bright midday light. The third senator asked, What news of Alcibiades? Are his forces as large as we feared? The messenger nodded grimly. At least as large as my reports say. He moves swiftly. I heard from a friend that Alcibiades wrote to Timon, hoping Timon might join him in assaulting the city. The fourth senator glanced warily at the gate. If Timon refuses to help us, we may have no chance. I was sure the steward could bring him back. More senators approached, their expressions bleak. The first senator shook his head. No help from Timon. He remains bitter. Alcibiades will soon be upon us, and we must be prepared for the worst. A collective unease rippled through them, and without another word they hurried inside the city to form their defense. Scene 3. Far away, a lone soldier roamed the scrubby woods near Timon's cave. Alcibiades had sent him to find Timon, but there was no sign of life. Finally, the soldier discovered a makeshift grave, loosely covered with earth, a simple stone marker at one end. He called out, Timon, anyone here? Silence replied. He stepped closer and saw faint letters carved into the stone. Carefully he traced them with a fingertip, but they were half buried and faded. Pulling out a small wax tablet, he pressed it over the inscription, copying what remained. Reading the words, his face clouded. He is dead, he whispered. Timon of Athens is no more. Glancing around, he found nothing to contradict the lonely grave. At last he tucked the tablet away and murmured, I will take this back to Alcibiades and let him see for himself. With that, the soldier turned and left, the grave behind him silent under the breeze. Scene 4. War drums pounded outside of Athens, echoing off the city walls. Alcibiades stood at the head of his army, eyes fixed on the gate. When he raised a hand, the drums ceased. A hush fell as the gates opened and several senators appeared on the ramparts. Alcibiades spoke in a clear voice. Athens, you have profited from injustices for too long. Others and I suffered under your counsels, and we now demand amends. Until now we begged for fair treatment, and you forced us to wander no more. Today I come to correct this debt. A senator tried to keep his voice steady. We've changed, noble Alcibiades. Those who wronged you are dead or disgraced. Do not punish the innocent. We beg you to spare them. Enter our city in peace if you must, but leave the blameless unharmed. Another senator added, Give us a chance to show our regret. If you need revenge, let it fall only on those who offended you. Spare the rest, who never wished you harm. Alcibiades considered. Then he unfastened a glove from his hand and raised it high. Here is my pledge. If you open your gates without bloodshed, we will enter as friends, but anyone proven to be my enemy or Timon's enemy will be handed over to justice. Beyond that, not a soul will be harmed. You have my word. A wave of relief spread among the senators. They ordered the gates open. Alcibiades signaled his men to wait until the city leaders came down. Just then a soldier approached, clutching the wax tablet. My lord, this is Timon's final message. He is dead. His grave lies by the sea, and these words are carved on the stone. Alcibiades read the inscription. His lips tightened. It spoke of Timon's hatred for mankind, his wish to be left alone, and his curse upon those who lingered at his grave. Alcibiades sighed, sorrow flickering on his face. Turning to the senators who now stood before him, he said, Timon of Athens is gone, leaving bitterness and scorn. He hated men in life, and even in death he calls on the sea to wash his memory away. I had hoped to find him alive. The senators bowed their heads. One whispered, We mourn his passing. He deserved better than he received. Alcibiades looked back at the assembled forces, then turned to the city. I will honor Timon in my own way. I promised no harm to the innocent, and I will keep that promise. Let this war bring peace to Athens, not its destruction. He lifted his voice so all could hear. People of Athens, I enter as your guest, not your conqueror. Let the guilty face justice, and let the rest find mercy. War must serve peace now. Drums, strike up and lead us forward, not as ravagers, but as those who will guide Athens to a better course. With that, the drums began again, a steady beat echoing against the walls. Alcibiades and his forces moved through the gates. Behind them the sun cast long shadows, and far away by the lonely shore, Timon's grave lay quiet, touched by the endless sigh of the tide.